Hey, I'm usually a quiet person. I'm not one of those people to air my dirty laundry. I'm not one of those people, you know what I'm saying, to just, put my business out like that, because I feel like what I've been through is not everybody's business. But when people start to take molestation and rape and start to downplay it, and they start to put it off on the victim, that becomes an issue for me, because I am a victim. A lot of times us women stay quiet, or us girls, in my case, when I was a child, we stay quiet because nobody believes us when we come forth to tell the truth. And in my family, it was more out of convenience than anything that people would turn a blind eye. When I was 4, me and my sister was sexually molested during bath time by one of my mom's friends. Back then, I didn't understand what was going on, so I couldn't really tell a story. When I was 8 years old, my mom passed away when I was 7, so when I was 8, my grandmother took us into custody, me and my 3 other siblings. And we all lived in Detroit, and my grandmother had to go run an errand. And she left us home with our great-grandmother. And I remember my uncle coming in, my grandmother's son. He came in drunk. While my uncle was drunk and belligerent, and my great-grandmother was babysitting us, my uncle came in and he raped my great-grandmother in front of us. I will never forget that day. I still have dreams about that day to this day. I remember it so vividly as if it was yesterday. I remember him fighting her. I remember him ripping off her diaper. I remember them tearing down the blinds in the living room while she was trying to fight him off. That alone can scar a child. So when I turned 11, and my grandmother stumbled upon my now father, which back then we didn't know that he was my father because the DNA hadn't been confirmed. So everybody was under the impression, because my younger sister looked like him, that he was her father, but come to find out he was actually my father. I remember him coming to pick my sister up and, taking her over to his house to spend a couple of weekends and a couple of nights. And I was jealous because I was like, my mom passed away and all I got is my grandmother. I don't know who my father is. I was kind of jealous of the fact that my sister was getting more attention. She was getting more clothes, more shoes, more toys, more outings, because she had that attention. And my grandmother being the only person around for us at the time, her attention was constantly split in between. So, there's always somebody left out. But anyways, my dad came over and started picking up my sister and, taking her over his house or whatever, and, letting her stay the night. And, one day I was like, can I go? Not knowing that what I was asking for wasn't what I thought I was asking for. So, he agreed. He was like, yeah, you can come over, tonight, and stay the night with me and your sister. So, I went over there and, we had shower time. We all showered. We laughed and talked and goofed around. We looked at, back then it was VHS movies, you had to put them in like that or whatever. There was no DVDs back then. But we all laughed and chilled and hung around throughout the day. And then nightfall came. And we all got in the bed, cut the lights out, put another movie in. And I remember him laying in the middle, and I was on one side of him, and my sister was on the other side. And I remember he rolled towards me, and he asked me a question. And, I never referred to him as my father. I referred to him by his name, because I knew back then I was taught that he wasn't my father, that he was only my sister's father. So he rolled towards me, and he was like, do you love Daddy? And I'm a kid, I'm like, yeah, I love you. He was like, well, if you love Daddy, you will let me touch you. And in my mind, I'm like, touch me. He went to reach over and touch things that he had no business touching, and I jumped up immediately. And he lived about, I would say, like roughly 3 to 4 blocks away from where my grandmother lived. I jumped up out that bed and I took my behind home. And I told my grandmother, and do you believe that to this day my grandmother did not believe it? She basically turned a blind eye, basically for convenience, because somebody was coming in, taking a load off of her back. You know, that's one less child that she had to supply for doing school. That's one less child that she had to deal with at the house. So I can't grasp the concept of how all these women are saying that, oh, they asked for it, or she was being fast, and she was doing this, and she was doing that. I did none of those things, and yet I was a victim. Not only by someone I didn't know, I was a victim to my own father. I was almost a victim to my own father. And you know the sad part about it is that after he tried to get me and I went home and told my grandmother, a couple of years later my sister came out and said that he had been raping her all along. Not only did one of my sisters come out, my other sister came out too. So that made 3 of us. But I was the only one that had the sense to speak up, because I wasn't all hyped up about materialistic things. If you're wrong, you're wrong. And my sister later on came to me and said, Tawana, I'm sorry that I didn't stand with you. I'm sorry that I couldn't tell my story then, because back then I was so happy with the fact that I was one of the children that got to leave up out of the house. I was one of the children that was given more attention. I was one of the children that got to do this, and that, while y'all didn't get a chance to do nothing. It hurt my feelings for a while, because I was like, dang, this is my family, you know? This is my family. So I'm going to fast forward a little forward. Well, I'm going to take you back a little bit to the story where my uncle raped my great-grandmother. So he raped my great-grandmother, and they found him. Later on, he was arrested. He did time, but he got out. And do you know when he got out that my grandmother let him back into our home? Me and my sister used to argue about who was sleeping in front of the bed. Me and my sister used to share a bed when we were younger. We would argue about who was sleeping in front, because my uncle would come home from work drunk, and he would bring a chair, and he would bring these little chocolate chip things that he had got from his job. And he'll come in there in the middle of the night and he'll shake them and say, I got y'all some chocolate. We would dread hearing those words. We would dread hearing that container shake, because when he showed up, he would sit in that chair and he would jack off in front of us. What kind of sick person jacks off in front of their nieces and thinks it's okay? That went on for about a year. And you know why we never spoke up? Why we never said anything? Because our family kept turning a blind eye. My grandmother loved her son so much that she couldn't even see the mental instability that he had. There was another time when my grandmother had left, and she left us in his care. And we were all in my brother's room. My brother had bunk beds, you know. At the bottom it was the full bunk bed, and at the top it was the smaller twin one. So we were all at the bottom bunk bed, and we were all playing, and we were all under the covers, and we were wrestling and stuff. And my uncle went to grabbing on me and trying to put his mouth all on me. I never told my grandmother about any of these things. What's the purpose in telling? I suffer even now. I'm 27 years old. I have 3 beautiful daughters. And I'm scared to leave my children in the room with their own father. It messes with you mentally. So my advice to all the girls out there, the young girls that don't feel like nobody is going to believe them, tell somebody that will. Don't allow yourself to be caged in and to fall prisoner, to feel like you're not good enough, or to feel like you don't deserve to be treated like a child, because nobody asks to go through what I've been through or to go through what you're going through. Don't be afraid. Speak up. Say something about it. My dad's incarcerated now, and I talk to him every now and then, because while he did what he did, I still have to forgive him. I talk to my uncle every now and then. He's incarcerated. I still talk to him because I forgive him. But it doesn't take away the scars. It doesn't take away the dreams. It doesn't take away the fact that I'm afraid to leave my own girls in the room with their own father. Think about that.